There are certain people who walk into a room and instantly shift the energy without saying a single word. Others around them suddenly feel uneasy, exposed, or strangely emotional, even though nothing obvious has happened. Someone may feel the need to open up, explain themselves, or quietly leave the space altogether. It is not about intimidation or attention. It is something deeper, something almost impossible to describe. Their mere presence changes the atmosphere. For years, psychology and human behavior studies have explored this strange phenomenon. Ancient cultures noticed it long before science tried to explain it, and some traditions even gave these individuals a sacred identity because of the unusual way they affected the people around them. This is not about being charismatic or socially powerful. In fact, many people who experience this feel misunderstood for most of their lives. They often grow up feeling disconnected from the world around them, like everyone else received instructions on how to function normally while they were left trying to decode life on their own. They are not necessarily louder, smarter, or more confident than others. What makes them different is the way their nervous system processes emotional information. Modern psychology refers to part of this as involuntary influence. Some individuals naturally affect the emotional state of others without trying to. They can sense tension, fear, dishonesty, sadness, or hidden emotions almost immediately, even when nobody else notices. Science links this partly to highly active mirror neurons, the part of the brain responsible for empathy, emotional reading, and understanding human behavior. While most people notice emotions only when they become obvious, these individuals pick up on the smallest details automatically. Their minds absorb the emotional reality of a room without effort. For many, this ability does not feel like a gift at all. It feels exhausting. Imagine spending your entire life sensing emotions people are trying hard to hide. You notice the fake smile, the forced laugh, the nervous movement in someone's hands, the tiny crack in a confident voice. Even as a child, you probably sensed things adults thought they were hiding successfully. A parent saying everything is okay while carrying fear inside. A teacher pretending to be cheerful while struggling emotionally. You learned very early that people often say one thing while feeling another. Most people only notice emotional inconsistencies occasionally. But for some, the brain constantly scans for them in the background. This heightened awareness is known as emotional dissonance detection. It means your mind naturally catches the mismatch between what people express outwardly and what they actually feel underneath. You were not imagining things or being overly sensitive. Your brain was processing micro-expressions, subtle tone shifts, body language, and emotional signals faster and deeper than the average person. The difficult part is that people often become uncomfortable around someone who unconsciously sees through emotional masks. Human beings survive socially by hiding parts of themselves. Most interactions rely on small performances, filtered emotions, and controlled appearances. But when someone naturally senses the truth underneath, others feel exposed without understanding why. That discomfort can create strange reactions. Some people become defensive around you. Some suddenly overshare personal information. Others avoid you completely. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your presence quietly forces emotional honesty. In ancient Lakota tradition, there was a recognized role known as the Heyoka. These individuals were seen as people who experienced reality differently from others. They often behaved in ways that appeared opposite or unconventional, not because they were broken, but because they perceived the world from another angle entirely. Instead of rejecting them, the community respected their role because they understood that these people carried an unusual sensitivity and awareness that could reveal truths others ignored. What is interesting is that modern science is slowly catching up to ideas ancient cultures already understood intuitively. Certain nervous systems are simply more receptive than others. Some people are wired to absorb emotional environments deeply. They feel the hidden tension beneath conversations. They detect the energy behind words rather than the words alone. This makes them highly perceptive, but it also makes life emotionally heavy. If this describes you, there is a good chance you spent years doubting yourself. Maybe people called you too emotional, too intense, too observant, or too quiet. Maybe you learned to suppress what you sensed because nobody else seemed to notice it. Over time, many highly sensitive people disconnect from themselves just to fit into environments that feel emotionally overwhelming. But the truth is, your mind was never malfunctioning. It was simply processing information at a depth most people do not experience consciously. The challenge is learning how to live with this sensitivity without letting it consume you. because when your nervous system constantly absorbs emotional signals from others, it becomes easy to feel drained, anxious, isolated, or emotionally overloaded. You may mistake other people's emotions for your own. You may avoid crowds, conflict, or certain environments without fully understanding why they exhaust you. Your body reacts to emotional dishonesty almost like physical stress. But there is also strength in this awareness when it is understood properly. People with this level of perception often become deeply compassionate, intuitive, creative, and emotionally intelligent. They notice what others overlook. They understand pain without needing long explanations. They can comfort others naturally because they sense emotions beneath the surface. Their presence alone can make people feel seen in a way they are not used to experiencing. The key is realizing that your sensitivity is not weakness. It is simply a different way of experiencing reality. The problem begins when you spend your entire life treating your perception like a flaw instead of understanding it as part of who you are. Once you recognize how your mind works, everything starts making sense. The confusion, the emotional exhaustion, the feeling of not fitting in, the strange reactions people have around you, all of it connects. You were never imagining the tension in a room. You were never crazy for sensing when something felt off, even before anyone admitted it. Your nervous system was reading information others ignored. And while that awareness can feel isolating, it can also become one of the most powerful forms of human understanding when balanced with self-awareness and emotional boundaries. Some people move through life only hearing what is spoken out loud. Others hear the silence underneath it too. What makes people like you so difficult for others to ignore is not just your ability to sense emotions, it's what your presence reflects back to them. Psychologists studying emotional regulation between people describe this as reflective resonance. In simple terms, your nervous system doesn't only detect what someone else is feeling, it mirrors it with unusual accuracy and then silently magnifies it. That is why being around you can feel comforting for some people and deeply unsettling for others, even when you have done absolutely nothing. When someone enters a room hiding anxiety, insecurity, guilt, or emotional pain, your energy naturally locks onto it. Without trying, you reflect those emotions back at a stronger intensity. The anxious person suddenly feels even more anxious. Someone suppressing guilt begins to feel it heavily in their chest. A person pretending to be confident starts feeling exposed underneath the performance they carefully built. Most of the time, they cannot explain why this is happening. You didn't accuse them, criticize them, or even mention anything directly. Yet somehow your presence alone makes it harder for them to hide from themselves. This is why people tend to react to you in extreme ways. Some feel immediately safe with you. They open up quickly, share deeply personal things, and describe you as calming or easy to talk to. What they are actually experiencing is the rare feeling of not needing to pretend anymore. Around you, emotional masks become exhausting to maintain. Your energy creates a space where honesty naturally rises to the surface, but not everyone welcomes that feeling. Other people pull away from you almost instantly. They may call you intense, overwhelming, intimidating, or emotionally draining. In reality, what makes them uncomfortable is not you. It is the fact that your presence disrupts the version of themselves they were trying to present. They arrived wearing an emotional costume, and around you, the costume suddenly stops working. Not everyone is ready for that kind of honesty. None of this means there is something wrong with you. But there is a side to this sensitivity that people rarely talk about honestly. The emotional depth you carry comes with a real psychological and physical cost. A nervous system constantly absorbing emotions, analyzing hidden tension, and reflecting emotional energy back outward is working overtime every single day. Studies on highly empathic individuals show elevated stress hormones, increased activity in the brain's emotional centers, disrupted sleep patterns, and chronic emotional exhaustion that normal stress relief methods often fail to fix. This is why simple advice like just relax or stop overthinking rarely works for you. Your mind is not processing emotions only at a conscious level. Most of it is happening automatically underneath awareness. Even when you try to disconnect, your nervous system keeps scanning, absorbing, and organizing emotional information around you. It does not stop because you want it to stop. It stops only when the processing is complete, and for someone like you, that process is almost never fully finished. That explains the kind of exhaustion you may have carried most of your life. You can wake up tired even after sleeping. A short conversation can leave you feeling emotionally depleted. Social situations that seem easy for others can drain you completely. Sometimes you leave a room feeling like you carried everyone else's emotions without meaning to. It is not laziness, weakness, or being too sensitive. Your nervous system is simply handling far more emotional data than most people realize. There is another hidden consequence that becomes even more difficult over time. Because you spend so much energy understanding other people, you slowly lose connection with yourself. You become highly skilled at reading everyone else's emotions while struggling to identify your own needs clearly. You can sense someone's pain after talking to them for 5 minutes, yet struggle to answer simple questions about your own happiness, desires, or boundaries. You may understand exactly why a friend keeps repeating unhealthy relationship patterns, but freeze when trying to explain what you personally need from love. You become fluent in everyone else's emotional language while forgetting how to hear your own voice. This is one of the most painful realities of a hyper-aware nervous system. The same sensitivity that makes you deeply intuitive with others can slowly disconnect you from yourself if you are not careful. Ancient traditions understood this long before modern psychology started studying it. In the Lakota understanding of the Heyoka, these individuals were never meant to carry their sensitivity alone. They existed within a grounded community because people recognized that such deep emotional awareness needed support, balance, and protection. Without grounding, the very thing that makes a person perceptive can become emotionally destructive. There is also something happening while you sleep that most people never realize. Your brain often remains highly active during the night, especially during REM sleep. Instead of fully shutting down into deep rest, your mind continues processing emotional experiences from the day. Conversations with hidden meanings, emotional tension you picked up subconsciously, contradictions between people's words and feelings, your brain keeps working through all of it while you sleep. This is why many emotionally sensitive people wake up feeling mentally busy, emotionally heavy, or strangely restless. Your brain spent the night sorting emotional information instead of fully resting. Sometimes you wake up between 3 and 5 a.m. with racing thoughts, sudden clarity, unexplained emotions, or a strong feeling that something is unresolved. It is because your mind has been organizing emotional patterns beneath the surface for hours. You were never too much. You were never weak for feeling things deeply. Your nervous system was simply designed to experience emotional reality at a level most people cannot consciously perceive. The challenge is learning how to protect your energy, reconnect with your own inner voice, and stop carrying emotions that were never yours to hold in the first place. Because if you spend your whole life absorbing everyone else without grounding yourself, your gift slowly turns into exhaustion. But when you learn balance, self-awareness, and emotional boundaries, that same sensitivity becomes one of the rarest forms of human understanding a person can have. Your mind is constantly working beneath the surface, even when you think you are resting. That is why you sometimes wake up with answers to problems you never consciously solved. It is why you suddenly sit up in the middle of the night feeling the need to contact someone, or why a situation that felt confusing before sleep somehow feels completely clear by morning. The problem itself did not magically disappear. Your brain simply continued processing it while your body was still. This is not some mystical phenomenon. It is the way a highly sensitive nervous system operates. While most people's brains gradually settle into deeper rest during sleep, yours often stays intensely active, especially in the areas connected to emotional processing, social understanding, memory, and pattern recognition. Your mind keeps sorting through unresolved conversations, hidden emotional tension, mixed signals, and emotional inconsistencies you picked up throughout the day without even realizing it consciously. That is also why extra sleep does not always leave you feeling refreshed. Your body may have been lying still for 8 hours, but your brain was still working the entire time. In many ways, sleep becomes another form of emotional processing rather than full recovery. You wake up mentally active because your mind never fully clocked out in the first place. Now think about what happens socially when someone like you enters a group setting. Whether you realize it or not, your presence naturally changes the emotional atmosphere around you. You become a kind of emotional center point, not because you are trying to dominate the room or attract attention, but because people unconsciously respond to the emotional honesty your energy creates. Conversations that begin casually often become unexpectedly deep around you. Someone who seemed perfectly composed suddenly starts opening up emotionally. A person who was holding everything together begins crying without fully understanding why. The entire emotional tone of the group quietly shifts. Pretending becomes harder. emotional masks start slipping, and often the person in the room hiding the most behind appearances becomes visibly uncomfortable. They either finally become real or they distance themselves entirely. You have probably experienced this many times and blamed yourself for it. Maybe you thought you made things awkward, said the wrong thing, or somehow changed the mood negatively. But most of the time, you were simply creating pressure on emotional dishonesty without intending to. False performances struggle to survive around someone who unconsciously senses what is underneath them. This becomes even more intense in close relationships. With romantic partners, family members, and lifelong friends, the emotional reflection never really turns off. The people closest to you constantly feel seen on a deeper level, whether they are comfortable with it or not. They cannot easily hide from themselves around you. That can be beautiful, but it can also feel emotionally demanding for someone who is not ready to face their own truth. The people who stay close to you long term are usually individuals who are willing to grow, self-reflect, and be emotionally honest. They may not always be easy people, but they are real. And because of that, your relationships often carry a depth most people rarely experience in their lives. At the same time, there will always be people who leave. That is part of this experience too. But it is important to understand something clearly. Many of those people are not rejecting you personally. They are rejecting what your presence reflects back to them. They are walking away from the mirror, not from your worth as a person. Carrying the belief that you are too much is one of the most damaging misunderstandings you can develop about yourself. You are not too intense or too difficult. You simply operate at a level of emotional awareness that not everyone is prepared for. The right people will not fear your depth. They will value it. But there is another side to this that must be understood honestly. Being emotionally sensitive does not automatically make you correct about everything you feel. One of the biggest dangers for highly perceptive people is confusing emotional signals with absolute truth. Your nervous system may accurately detect tension, sadness, anger, or fear, but that does not always mean your interpretation of the cause is correct. You might correctly sense that someone is upset while completely misunderstanding why they feel that way. You may feel distance in a relationship and correctly notice a shift in energy, but incorrectly assume the source of it. Sensitivity is powerful, but it still requires humility and self-awareness. The healthiest version of someone like you is not a person who blindly trusts every emotional impression. It is someone who listens deeply while remaining grounded enough to question their assumptions. Mature sensitivity means recognizing the signal while staying curious about its meaning, instead of instantly turning feelings into certainty. Every emotionally aware person goes through a phase where they mistake strong impressions for complete truth. That is normal. But growth comes from learning balance. Your perception is valuable, but it is still perception, not perfect reality. This is exactly why solitude and stillness are not luxuries for you. They are necessary. You need moments away from other people's emotional energy so you can reconnect with your own thoughts, feelings, and identity. Without quiet, without space, without intentional separation from constant emotional input, you eventually lose the ability to tell which emotions belong to you and which ones you absorbed from others. And when that boundary disappears, life becomes overwhelming very quickly. You stop feeling grounded inside yourself. You become emotionally flooded by everyone around you. That is why protecting your peace is not selfish. It is survival for a nervous system that naturally absorbs more than most people ever realize. Your sensitivity was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to deepen your understanding of people, life, and yourself. But for that gift to remain healthy, it needs boundaries, rest, self-awareness, and silence. Otherwise, the same awareness that allows you to understand others so deeply can slowly cause you to disappear inside everyone else's emotions. In the old traditions around the Heyoka, solitude was never seen as isolation or punishment. It was maintenance, a deliberate withdrawal used to reset the system, like clearing corrupted data so perception could function properly again. Without that kind of regular reset, the mind becomes overloaded and clarity starts to break down. If you are not creating space like this on purpose in your own life, then in a very real sense, you are running on emotional noise that never fully clears. And even if you've never had the words for it, you've probably felt that mental weight building up over time. Now, when this inner system is balanced, something very different happens. When your awareness is grounded and you are not just reacting to everything around you, your presence starts to change. People begin to instinctively turn toward you in moments that matter, not because you are the loudest voice or the most entertaining person in the room, but because something about you feels steady when everything else feels uncertain. You don't offer comfort by pretending things are fine. You offer something deeper than that. People feel like they can finally be honest without being judged. They feel like they can drop their guard without being criticized or fixed. In your presence, they sense that their emotions won't overwhelm you, that you won't collapse under their weight or rush to simplify what they are going through. That alone is rare. In a world where most people are uncomfortable with emotional depth and try to minimize pain or rush towards solutions, your ability to simply stay present becomes something powerful. You don't have to force it. In fact, it works best when you stop trying so hard to help and just allow yourself to be fully there. That's when your presence becomes grounding instead of overwhelming. That's when it becomes something people remember. In many ways, this is what the Heyoka represented. Not performance, not effort, but raw presence. A refusal to pretend. A way of moving through the world that naturally interrupts illusion and brings people back to themselves. That kind of energy doesn't need to push. It just reveals. But there is something even more important to understand here. For years, most of the focus has been on what people like you give to others, how you impact them, how you hold space, how you carry emotional weight. Very little attention is given to what you owe yourself in the process. And that is where things quietly begin to fall apart if you are not careful. You need to stop over-explaining yourself to people who are never willing to understand you in the first place. You probably spend a lot of energy trying to soften your personality so others feel more comfortable around you, trying to translate your depth into something easier to digest. That effort drains you more than you realize. The truth is, you cannot reduce your sensitivity just to make someone else's world simpler. You can only choose who gets access to it. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, but a rare form of awareness that allows you to perceive life on a deeper emotional level than most people ever will. It can feel overwhelming at times, but when balanced with self-awareness and boundaries, it becomes a powerful source of clarity, intuition, and truth. The real transformation begins when you stop fighting your nature and start understanding how to live in alignment with it. You are not here to shrink yourself for comfort, but to bring honesty and depth into spaces that desperately need it.